الآن نسافر سويا إلى هولندا حيث أمستردام. Let's say welcome to Mr. Yannick Dobent, who came from Amsterdam. You have a choice to either stand here or sit here, and we are looking for translator. الأستاذ يانيك دوبونت حاصل على درجتي الماجستير في العلاقات الدولية وعلم الاجتماع، وهو مؤسس وقف أو منظمة سبارك لدعم التعليم وريادة الأعمال في المجتمعات المتأثرة بالصراعات. هو عضو في أيضا المجلس الاستشاري الهولندي للشؤون الدولية وعدة مجالس دولية. هو أيضا عضو في المجلس الاستشاري لمركز نظرية التغيير. شغل عدة مناصب استشارية وقيادية، ودرس أيضا في جامعة أمستردام. لديه خبرة تمتد لأكثر من 30 عاما في التنمية الاقتصادية والعمل بالمجتمعات الهشة. ليحدثنا عن وقف سبارك.
السلام عليكم. مساء الخير. It's my pleasure and honor to be invited here to speak today. And first of all, I want to start thanking the Ashakia Chamber for an amazing event. I have to say that every year, a few times only, one or two times, I have the feeling that I'm seeing a new window of something really remarkable that's really a lot of learning to me. And this has definitely been one of them.
أولا أود أن أشكركم على دعوتكم لي لحضور هذا المنتدى، وبالتأكيد أود أشكر اللجنة وكذلك غرفة الشرقية. وكل عام أرى يوجد هناك نوافذ للخير جديدة.
So briefly about myself, at the moment I'm appointed to the Dutch Foreign Ministry. It's an international council for advising our parliament and government on international affairs, particularly for development, for international development. It's an independent expert position, so not part of government, but we are critically advising our government.
أنا حاليا أشغل منصب مستشار في المجلس للشؤون الخارجية في هولندا، وهذا لإعطاء الاستشارات فيما يتعلق في المعونات والمساعدات.
And I teach the Haat College, it's Dubai, Madrid, and Nijmegen University on innovation in humanitarian development work. And this is why I was invited, founder of Spark, a Dutch, or I would say meanwhile, a really international global organization. And Global Shift is our last organization we just founded.
أنا محاضر في مجال الابتكار في الأعمال الخيرية والإنسانية، وأنا تم دعوتني إلى هذا المنتدى بكوني مؤسس لسبارك، وهي مؤسسة خيرية.
So briefly about Spark. It was founded in 1994. I was then a student. I think I'm the guy with the long hair. I think it's changed. And we were students at the university observing the genocide in Bosnia-Herzegovina. So we decided to start raising funding from the public, from our government, from companies, to bring food parcels and to bring study materials to students in Tuzla in Bosnia-Herzegovina.
في عام 1994 تم تأسيس سبارك، وبهذه الصورة كما تروني أنا كنت طالب، وكانت أبدو مختلفا عما أبدو الآن، شعري طويل كان، قمنا بجمع التبرعات من أجل إرسالها إلى بوزنيا التي كانت تتعرض للإبادة الجماعية.
So, and I'll come to that at the end. I think that was the most life-changing experience I had, was to sit literally 100 kilometers away from Srebrenica when the genocide occurred, and then to live 3 months between the survivors who came to Tuzla, especially youth. And I must say that really painted my rest of my life till today, again observing another genocide in Gaza. And I think that has been the driver of our whole group, to try to work in difficult environments to help youth to overcome through education or through building a new livelihood.
كان بالتأكيد من الصعب جدا لمشاهدة الإبادة الجماعية التي كانت تحدث على قرب من ما كنت أنا فيه، وبالتأثير الإبادة الجماعية التي تحدث حاليا في غزة نفس الشيء. فكان الهدف هو لإعطاء فرصة للشباب في مجال بناء الأعمال التجارية وإعطائهم فرصة للتعليم.
Yeah, so we do this in particular to 4 different methods. It's investing in small medium enterprise, startup or scale up. And I will come to that in a moment, including revolving Sharia compliant funding for companies, and skilling up youth and letting them graduate their education, particularly university degrees.
المشاريع التي نقوم فيها هي أولا لتوسيع المشاريع الصغيرة ومتوسطة الحجم، كذلك زيادة مهارات الشباب وموائمتها مع سوق العمل، وبناء كذلك أعمال تجارية جديدة لهم.
And then actually something very interesting happened. So Spark was not supposed to be a continuing charity. It was supposed to be solidarity for the mainly Bosnian Muslim population in Tuzla. But then when we graduated, our activists then from Tuzla, they said, what about Kosovo? Because Kosovo started exploding. After that, what about Afghanistan? What about Somalia? What about Syria? What about Palestine? What about... So at this moment, 95% of staff is actually Muslims from these countries. And so I'm now happy to say that that I've become an ethnic minority in my own charity. And that's very important for a point that I will make in a moment.
أود أن أبين بأن سبارك في البداية كانت هي فقط لبوسنيا، ولكن بعد ذلك لكوسوفو وإلى المأساة التي تحدث في أفغانستان، فالآن تقريبا 95% هم من المسلمين، وأنا يعني شوي حزنان أقول لكم أني أنا الأقلية الغير مسلمة الموجودة في هذه الجمعية.
Yeah, so I think the big transformation we made was from if I'm very open, I come from a small town in Holland, from a very Western-centric, let's go out and save the world, let's bring democracy, to, let's say, a very mixed organization that has become truly culturally sensitive. I think this has been my own also personal changing of a journey. Also then allowing to build very interesting mechanisms to leverage East-West cooperation for development.
أنا أتي من بلدة صغيرة هولندية، وعندنا يعني إيمان أنه دعونا يعني نقوم بعون العالم، إلى أنه تأسيس سبارك وهو يتكون من أقليات مختلفة ومن جنسيات مختلفة أدى إلى زيادة الإحساس بالتنوع الثقافي.
Yeah, so then on sustaining resources, because I think that's the big topic here of the panel and today, we used to be spending grants, so raise money, zakat, or general donations, or even funding from governments, from the European Union, and then spending it on scholarships, spending it on livelihood, on food aid. But then we found that actually there is other mechanisms besides this, because I don't think it's bad to do that can give you money, that can be revolving.
أحد المواضيع الملتقى اللي هي الاستدامة المالية. ففي البداية بدأنا من خلال إعطاء القروض، إلى أنه بعد ذلك بدأنا بالتفكير في كيفية جعل المشاريع هي مدرة للدخل من أجل استدامتها.
So I think the main learning we had is to build up loan guarantee funds. First interest bearing, but then in some countries very low uptake. Again, very Western-centric at the beginning, and then also having Sharia compliance mechanisms in Palestine, in Bosnia, in Somalia, where basically we put money from an endowment or from a grant in an escrow account with the bank so that it can compensate for possible losses. So in exchange, the bank will give loans at far lower cost. And if some entrepreneur can really not pay, forgive it from that endowment money.
فبدأنا في عملية قروض طويلة الأمد من خلال أخذها من الوقف ووضعها في البنك، والبنك يقوم بتشغيلها، وتكون هذه طبعا حسب الشريعة الإسلامية.
Yeah, so this I think was really amazing because we had, I would say, it's actually a strategy for decreasing your investment financially, but massive increase in social return, because people who normally would not qualify for a bank loan could suddenly get one. So especially refugees, youth, women in some of these countries had very difficulty accessing loans, and this enabled them to start a company. And believe me, many of them are so passionate to succeed, to demonstrate they can do it, that we had between 80 to 98 in the best location return of investment. So still a loss, but again, we blended that again with more grant and endowment money to compensate for that.
أود أقول أنه هذه الاستراتيجية ربما هي تقلص قدرتك من الاستثمار، إلا أنه تزيد الأثر الاجتماعي على الشباب والسيدات ومن خلال بدء المشاريع حقتهم.
Yes, the key elements were that it should be additional, so not people who can get a regular loan should be able to access it. Very much reduced access conditionality, and if people really cannot make it, don't get them into debt problems, but forgive it. And what was very interesting for me was, and also a bit confronting for me, I have to be very honest, is that when we launched Sharia-compliant loan products, the fights I had in the West, in Brussels, in Amsterdam, in Washington, where I was presenting this, first confusion. You're white and you're defending Sharia, what is this? And then explaining, look, if we work there, and meanwhile I worked 25 years living in these countries, we have to leave our cultural baggage behind, and we need to design products that are for the environment. So for me, the most confronting was actually that cultural battle I had to wage in the West, that I think now is turning. Actually, I see a lot of Sharia-compliant products by a lot of large international NGOs at the moment.
في البداية يعني تقديم هذه القروض اللي من خلال وفق الشريعة الإسلامية كانت تلاقي صد كبير من الحكومة الغربية، فكانوا ينظروا إلي أنت أبيض وأنت تود إعطاء قروض حسب الشريعة الإسلامية، إلا أنه بعد أخذ وقت طويل جدا أقنعتهم بأنه ما دام نحن نشتغل يعني نعمل مع الدول الإسلامية يجب علينا إعطاء حلول حسب الشريعة الإسلامية هناك.
Then there was a second way that we learned. Oops, I go too quick. And that took me about 15 years to learn. At the beginning, in Dutch, I worked for a foreign minister for a year before I started up Spark. It was very easy. You take money from the Dutch, we design a program, we go implement. So one donor, and the population giving money. And we saw this as a closed ecosystem. We raise the money from the known friends, government and citizens, and we spend it. And then suddenly we realized we're no longer really independent, are we, if we take it only from one source. We run a huge financial risk if that market is not going well. But also we run into these cultural problems. How do you operate in some countries like Yemen on women empowerment? It's very different than in Amsterdam. So we learned how to diversify the income sources.
تعلمت أحد الأمور وأخذتني تقريبا 14 سنة، وهي عملية الاستقلالية المالية. ففي البداية بدأنا من أخذ قروض من الحكومة، نعتمد على الحكومة وبعد ذلك نقوم بتوزيعها. إلا أنه وجدنا أنه يوجد أول مشاكل في الاستدامة المالية، والأمر الآخر كيف عملية توزيعها في ثقافات مختلفة مثل على سبيل المثال اليمن.
So, for example, there was one large program till recently that closed last year, mostly, that was at the end a €100 million program, where, and this was a wonderful model, there was, for example, charities, they can risk a bit more. So we would pilot something with the charity together, co-create something, pilot it, improve it for a year, fail, learn, adjust, and once it's ready, go to the European Union, go to my government. So we had what I called 1, 5, 10. So with $1 we improved, we learned, then we raised 5 from another source, like the European Union, and then we doubled it again with, for example, our cooperation, I will come to that in a moment, with JCC states, with the Gulf states. And what that did is not only then some of these charities became leaders, because they piloted this, so they are then the legacy of the program is with them, but also it leverages their impact It's not anymore their own little ecosystem, or little, sometimes it's big, but actually it is setting the leadership, thought leadership of bigger players that you will then bring on board.
بدأنا في عملية بناء منظومة من الشراكات مع جمعيات خيرية صغيرة، وأعطاهم بالبداية في مشاريع تجريبية، فنعطيهم على سبيل المثال قيمة محددة ويجربوا، وإذا فشلوا نذهب إلى جهة أخرى، مثلا على سبيل المثال الاتحاد الأوروبي، نأخذ كمان قرض ثاني ونعطي هذه الجمعيات اللي هي موجودة في المجتمعات الأخرى، وبهذا نقوم بإعطائهم دور القيادة والأثر في مجتمعهم.
Yeah, and again,
5 minutes left.
yes, 2 minutes?
5.
5, oh, okay. That's more than I hoped. Now, so it was first of all financial impact, 1, 5, 10. So small charity, proof concept, take it to the European Union. They have too much money sometimes. And then they scale it. And then again, take it back to big other institutional donors and make it 10. And then make sure that you preserve the legacy of the original group that gave, so they also feel that they feel respected. That for me was very important, although I do understand there is an issue of modesty, that some try not to be too visible. But I think it's important to be visible, because I also want to make that point maybe here, is that it was not about the financial impact only, it's also the cultural impact. If you help, if you work with, for example, European, American organizations, and help them to better program, to better be culturally adapted to the countries in, for example, this region, the impact will be much bigger. And I think it's also, you need to educate us, white folks, sometimes I can say now, after a while. So it had much more, I'd say, cultural impact to cultural design, but also it leveraged.
المنظومة والمنهج اللي نقوم فيه من خلال تمكين الجمعيات الصغيرة والقيام بتجريب مشاريعها على مستوى صغير، وبعد ذلك يعني لإعطائهم القدرة على النجاح وتمويلهم أكثر والتوسع في مشروعهم، بالتأكيد له آثار ثقافية، وبالتأكيد قام بتعليمنا نحن ذوي الطبقة البيضاء في إحداث أثر في مجتمعاتهم.
And also a point to make, I think that's again unfortunately very important, to do positive cultural bridging. So I'm not sure how it's here in the region exactly, but I'm getting in Amsterdam from some of my friends, Muslim friends, that they have a new war and terror feeling, you know, Islamophobia rising in the West. And so for me, this cooperation is super important to demonstrate also in our media, joining forces for the common good, you know, to send counter messaging that we are all for humanity and we're all fighting for the same cause. So this is from some of the partners. You will see it was united East-West. It was in difficult times uniting even within the Gulf. That was also not sometimes easy. But again, if you focus on the common good, one objective, it was always possible.
بالتأكيد هذا المنهج الذي قمنا به من خلال إحداث شراكة ما بين الشرق والغرب هو يمد الجسور الثقافة، وكذلك يزيل الرسائل الغير صحيحة ما بين المجتمعات.
Okay, now I will switch something on aid localization. You can read it in the paper that I shared with the organizers. That's basically about the importance, I think, to identify very important domestic initiatives. Now, UN is doing great work. I know there's a lot of giving to UN, to large international NGOs, but there's amazing rise of social community organizations in the Arab world that deserve to grow and to get direct aid.
بالتأكيد يوجد الكثير من الجمعيات الخيرية داخل المجتمعات التي تستحق من الدعم. في الماضي كنا ندعم فقط الأمم المتحدة، ولكن حاليا يوجد الكثير من الجمعيات الخيرية في المجتمعات التي تحتاج وتستحق الدعم.
Maybe just one small bridge to Kuwait, because I heard the speaker from Kuwait here today, that actually one of these examples that I put up was with Jamal Al-Nouri. And to give you an example, so we received a conditional funding from the EU to help young entrepreneurs in training, but we lacked money for the loans. So then it was Jamal Al-Nouri who put up the charity loan guarantee. It was Al Baraka Bank, of all, who was the only one in Turkey willing to do this for refugees. It's sensitive. So then it became EU doing the technical assistance to these companies, Jamal doing the risk insuring from the charity, and then the Baraka Bank doing the commercial loan, not commercial, but doing the loans at a reduced rate. And then it became the first SME project for refugees in Turkey, for Syrian community.
هذا مثال على الشراكة ما بين بنك البركة وجمعية سبارك وكذلك جمال عموري، حيث قمنا بالشراكة وكل واحد قام بالدعم. فمثلا هم قاموا بعملية تنمية مهارات رواد الأعمال، البنك البركة قام بالتمويل بالقروض، فكان مثال على الشراكة.
Last minute, please.
Then, yeah, one thing, and I made that point, but just I think it's so important. I think to get recognized of all this effort from the charities is very important, and also to take it to levels. So, for example, in the Netherlands, we worked a lot with Her Highness the Queen of the Netherlands. She was our ambassador of a large scholarship program that I mentioned, 100 million. And it was amazing because she would speak next to people from Kuwait, Qatar. We were presenting this in a positive way, you see, as something that uniting for the common good. And I think this has done, what I got back also from my friends in Holland, from different communities, an effect beyond the direct good of the program, but also an effect on, let's say, normalizing East-West positive cooperation, which unfortunately I think still we need to do a lot of work on.
أعتقد الفعاليات على سبيل المثال الفعاليات لتعريف المجتمعات عن الأعمال الخيرية التي نقوم بها هي أمر مهم جدا. أحد الفعاليات عادة نقوم بدعوة صاحب السمو الملكة نذرلاند، وهي تقوم بالحديث مع الكثير من رواد الأعمال من جميع أنحاء العالم، وهي الفعاليات هي تمد الجسور الثقافة ما بين البلدان المختلفة.
So maybe last 20 seconds. So at the moment we're working with a new group, Local Shift, which includes an ex-Dutch minister, ex-DG from UN, from EU ECHO, also groups here from the Gulf, on an intervention for Lebanon, for Gaza, working with some people behind the scene on the second track, Robert Seri, where we're trying to see how can we already start planning for helping, already help now, but also start planning for reconstruction of education, reconstruction of livelihoods. And that's for me a very personal mission, because after 30 years I feel back to the future, back to the past of Bosnia and Tuzla. And I think it's going to be such an incredible political and human effort is going to be needed to get a sustainable future for the Palestinian people and Lebanese people by now. Yeah, so that's our next venture, and I hope we can work together on some of that. Thank you.
شكرا لكم. فقط حاليا نعمل نحن مع جهات خيرية موجودة في منطقة الخليج العربي، وهي بالتأكيد لإعادة بناء الإنساني والتعليمي في غزة ولبنان، وأتطلع للعمل مع مؤسساتكم. شكرا.